Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Jonas.
And welcome to Dave Takes It On. We've got a bit of a stranger. You don't often see him in front of the camera. This is Jonas, my eldest son. Jonas does an awful lot of work in the background, does a lot of editing, a lot of audio editing. He's a sound engineer. He does the thumbnails, the titles, and all the monitoring of all the data and analytics that we don't normally associate with just making a video. I just make the videos. So it's nice to get him out in front of the camera. And what we decided to do today is Jonas has prepared some questions. I haven't seen the questions in advance, so he's going to ask me some questions and we'll see how I get on with this. So Jonas, it's over to you.
When it comes up on the dash that the car is preconditioning, do I push the notification or ignore it and leave it there?
Well, it depends what car. I can only talk about Teslas because these are the ones I've tested most. Well, my particular Tesla. It's an advisory notice. It's just telling you that the car is preconditioning. And if the car is preconditioning, it means, well done, you've actually told the car you're going to a supercharger because it can't guess where you're going. So if you don't tell it in the sat-nav that you're going to a supercharger or program your final destination, in which case it will pick off your charging points along the way and precondition on those. It's purely notification. You don't need to do anything. It will do it. But just one other point on that, if you, in the morning, it's cold outside and you want to precondition your cabin, so it's nice and comfortable to get into, on a Tesla you have an option of either preconditioning the cabin or preconditioning the cabin and the battery. And I always choose the battery because I charge at home, so I'm paying 7.5 pence a kilowatt hour, so I can run the battery heaters absolutely fine. As the battery gets warmer, it gets more efficient. A very cold battery is very inefficient. So you with petrol and diesel cars, you'll know in the winter when you turn, the battery really puts out less power. So if you, when you're preheating your cabin, actually just preheat the battery as well, when you set off, you've got full power, it's at its optimum efficiency, and that will give you your optimum range.
Right, so Dave, we have a question. This was in response to a video we did, which is why electric vehicles don't need to have a 1,000 mile range, which was quite a popular one. One of our subscribers mentions, my second car I owned was a Morris Minor. I did many long distance road trips in it, a 5-gallon tank and 40 to the gallon, so around 200 miles range. My EV today is an MG4 standard range and it will do about 200 miles. What's the problem?
The answer is there isn't a problem, it's a perceived problem. Now, once again, I've just done a video on this quite recently and I was following Jim Farley. He's the CEO of Ford. And last year, for the first time ever, he's been building EVs for several years, but the first time ever last year, he went out on a road trip in an F-150 Lightning to see what it was like for himself. And he came back absolutely horrified. And some of you might have seen that interview. I've posted it on a number of videos. But what he coined was a phrase, which is, he said, there is no such thing as range anxiety, there is charging anxiety. And I thought this was really interesting. You see, an EV, well, there's an example. A typical EV might do 300 or 400 mile on a full tank of fuel. A typical ICE car might do 300 or 400 mile on a tank of fuel. You never set off thinking, oh, what's going to happen? Oh, I'm never going to get there. Because you know that wherever you are in the country, somewhere nearby there's a petrol station. And if it's open, it'll have petrol there and you know the price of it roughly in advance and you know you can put it in and everything else. So you have total reassurance that no matter how far you drive, as your range starts decreasing, you'll be able to pull into a station. Now, with an EV, that's the one thing we don't have. I do with a Tesla, but a lot of people don't, because if you go and see some of the videos that they've got, particularly in America, the latest figures over there, only 72% of the chargers that were tested in a random independent test actually gave a charge. And the figures are horrendous. So you get a situation where people have a fear of when they are reaching towards the end of the range, they may not be able to find a charger that's working, or doesn't have a queue.
And that sounds like a pretty justified fear. If potentially close to a third are not even going to work properly.
It's an absolute fear, and this is the problem. It's not a range anxiety. It's the people saying we need 500-mile range, 1,000. That's not what we need. What we need is the ability that whenever you do need to charge, you can pull in anywhere, you can find a charger that's working, that doesn't have a queue, and is a sensible price, which will allow you to just charge and carry on. And when we get that, range anxiety will disappear altogether.
But how soon are we going to get something like that?
One of the observations I have is that we could do it today. We have, I think on the video recently, I said that they're putting in about 4,000 EV ultra-rapid chargers this year in the UK. We go round and we go filming everywhere, and the vast majority of chargers we go to are nowhere near full. We've never, when we've been wanting to charge, we've never had to queue. Most of the charges we see are pretty much deserted. Occasional hotspots, bank holiday or particular events. But figures I saw from PricewaterhouseCoopers, who do surveys into all of this so they can advise their customers about investment in EV and infrastructure, they found that the average EV charger in the UK spends less than 5 hours a day charging. That means for 18, 19 hours a day, it's sat there not being used. As an investment, that needs to be taken into account. But what it means is that we are using them wrong. We are going to chargers at a time when everyone else is going to a charger. And it's the same as if you go to McDonald's at lunchtime or school turning out time, you'll find a queue. It's always going to be there. You know it. And a lot of the chargers now, they have apps or websites where you can look at the chargers and you can find out which one has free ones and which one is busy.
Before you go any further, I can hear people in the comments going, okay, Dave, but you're retired. It's very easy for you to pick a time that's convenient for you. If you're a working parent, if you're a young professional, maybe they don't have a choice. So is it just a case that some people won't have a choice and they're going to come across full chargers that are more expensive as well?
Well, first of all, I dispute that argument because for someone who's working with busy family and everything else, most people today only do about 140 mile a week, 20 mile a day. This is UK average figures from the leasing companies. So you need to fill up your battery by 140 miles once a week. Now, the average car trying to fill up 140 miles will take about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something in that region.
Is that for newer cars or
Nope.
Some old cars?
Mine will do it as well.
Okay.
If I want to top it up by 140 mile, I guarantee 20, 30 minutes, that's all I need.
And how old's your car for our audience?
Mine's 8 years old. It's a really old one. So your argument, I accept it fully, is wrong. And that's because you're telling me that in a 7-day week, with a weekend there, and with going to work and going home every day, that you can't find half an hour out of queuing time to go and charge.
So I suppose it's more of a lifestyle thing. It's that you have to change your way of doing it. You can't just use the same old way of doing it.
For example, one of the things I would probably do if I was still working would be to get up half an hour early one day, set off for work half an hour early and charge on the way to work. I suspect not many people doing it because we have a habit nowadays. Last minute, coffee, breakfast, everything else, watch the news now. I'm late for work, and you jump in your car and you... One day a week, set off half an hour early, stop at a charger, put half an hour in, or if you can't do half an hour, do 15 minutes twice a week. There are ways around it, and the great example I always use is imagine your absolute favourite film star or pop star or musician, whatever it is, he's your absolute idol, and you hear that 30 miles away, he or she's going to be appearing in a pub and will meet the people who turn up, greet them, you can talk to them, get autographs and everything, but they're only going to be there one evening between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock next Thursday evening. Would you find the time to drive 20 mile to meet your idol? And I guarantee an awful lot of people would arrange babysitters or whatever it is, put the kids, it doesn't matter. You'd get out there to meet them.
I think that might be slightly different than just trying to charge your car each week.
Lifestyle choices. If you change your habits very slightly, pick a time when the chargers are not busy. And the interesting thing is, I was looking at some of the occupancy figures. Rugby, for example, their peak time is not 5 to 6 o'clock, which is what I thought. It's actually 3 to 4 o'clock for some reason. Could be school turning out time. I don't know what it is, but rugby, for example, you can go there 5 or 6 o'clock and it's half empty. Go there 3 o'clock, it's heaving. So get to know your local charger, find out the busy times, and just change something so you turn up there when it's not busy. And
it's worth pointing out, most people will charge at home, and this is a non-issue for anyone.
Non-issue at home, of course. I mean, me, for example, I've got a home charger. I've got a 82 kilowatt hour usable battery space. I can charge mine overnight, absolutely full, and that'll give me 250 mile range. So if I wasn't going out up to Scotland, down to Cornwall, filming for the channel, I would never have to stop at a public charger ever.
Hi Dave, how do I get in touch, as I want to let you know about my easy experience driving to southern Spain? So how do our viewers get in touch?
Excellent. If you look in the description down below, and I just realised for people who watch this on a TV, you have a much more difficult task of this than I'm saying here. But if you're on a computer, look at the description down below and you'll find our email address. It's very simple. It's davetakesiton@gmail.com. We welcome people contacting us. We have a lively contribution rate. People are always sending me photos, stories and everything else. And where possible, we try and feature those. And we're actually going to be making it a feature edition for the future to try and get some of these stories out there. Because someone who does go down to Spain regularly in an EV, that's someone I want to talk to. I want to find out what they do, how they find it. And one I met recently was at Exeter Services. He was a GP from down in Cornwall, from Penwell Station. And he's got 2 Renault Zoes. He and his wife have got one. And they take a Renault Zoe down to Italy several times a year. I asked him if he'd send the story through. I've not received it yet, but I'd be fascinated to watch, to hear of these stories and actually feature them in some of the videos.
So maybe it would be an idea for me to add it into some of our videos at the end, the email address, so people can see it rather than just being in the description.
Or at the bottom of the screen, when and I can make a comment, if you've got a story, and we can put it on there. So yeah, we ought to do that. Oh, sorry, you ought to do that.
Right. Yes, I'll take that as a task. This was one where the Chicago Tesla snow debacle was completely avoidable. That's the video that we did on it. And one of our subscribers has asked, did we see petrol cars needing to be warmed up to fill up their tank? So is it, when it gets too cold, is that a legitimate criticism of EVs?
It's a criticism of ICE cars as well. If you talk to the RAC, the AA, or any of the motoring organisations, the breakdown ones, they will tell you their call-out rate when it goes really cold outside is the highest in the whole year. It's not running out of petrol on a bank holiday weekend, anything like that. The biggest cause of a call-out is a battery that won't start. And in the cold, your battery, same as our batteries in the EVs, the batteries become much less efficient. And that's why you hear, sometimes I hear it out in the road, where in the winter, there's someone out there going, and that battery is probably perfectly good on a warm day, but because it's so cold, that battery doesn't work.
So it's not just about the battery they're asking, so do they have to warm up their tank? So warm up their fuel tank?
On the car? No, they don't. No. But you do have to warm up the car. You'll start the car, and the car for the first couple of miles is pouring out steam. They're very, very efficient when they're cold, ICE engines. And so they have no restrictions on filling up. The petrol won't freeze, the car won't freeze. But the engine becomes very inefficient, and the battery trying to start the engine is even more inefficient.
So is that true everywhere, or are there some countries where they do need to heat up their fuel tank?
Yeah, if you go to somewhere like Canada, Alaska, Norway, what you find, certainly Alaska, the cars have immersion heaters built into the engine sump. So you've got a big sump at the bottom which is full of engine oil, and they put an immersion heater in there. And when you go to a shop or a retail park or a restaurant, you actually plug your petrol or diesel car into an electrical socket. And what that does is it keeps the engine oil warm, and the engine oil warms the rest of the engine.
So is it a case that the UK and also, of course, the US, they're not really geared up for the cold weather, whereas the countries that are perhaps more used to that cold weather have systems for dealing with it?
Yeah, it's a case like that. I know I'm a keen aircraft fanatic, and when they fly down to the Antarctic stations and they drop things, the very first thing they do when they stop a plane is they drain the oil out of the engines, because if they let them go cold, they'll never get the thing started again. And then just before they're going to start, they actually heat the engine oil up, pour it in, that warms the engine up, and they start, and off they go for the return journey. It's a problem. Cold weather's a problem for petrol, diesel, anything. You see sometimes the old film about lorry drivers stuck on the M62 in thick snow, and they had a fire going under the tank. That's because diesel has wax in it, and it's normally a liquid at normal temperatures, but when the temperature gets down, that wax comes out as little flakes, and they block the filters, and you can't start it. So literally they would have a fire underneath their fuel tank.
Not something I would perhaps want to experience.
Go on Google, you'll see photographs of it. It was the only way they could keep them going. Nowadays they do have better diesel, and if you are in Alaska, you will use a different diesel, which doesn't have this problem, or it doesn't have it at the sort of temperatures we're dealing with here. But UK, we get 1 or 2 days a year where it's a bit cold. That fiasco in Chicago, I think that was -40. It was just ridiculous. A lot of people will remember the Beast from the East a couple of years ago. I don't know if you know what temperature we got down to, but for us, the worst event on record, we got down to -12. -12. And in Antarctic or in Alaska, that's probably a summer's day to them.
I've asked my council if I could have a cable gully outside my house as I have no drive, and they said no. He asked if they could have a charge point, also said no. So this is one for our viewers where home charging is not currently an option for them. What are their potential options?
It's a really good question, and a really timely question, because in contradiction to that, I have also just contacted my local council, and I have just yesterday received the reply. And I live in South Ribble Borough Council, just on the outskirts of Preston. So my council is South Ribble. And I sent in an email which basically said, I'm thinking of moving to a terraced house. I don't have off-road parking. I sent them a picture of a pavement gully, specifically for EV cables, and said, what's your policy? I'm just going to read, I'll post it up on the screen. I'll just read the reply. So they said, the initial reply was, you'd need to submit a pre-application inquiry. For this case, it's free because it's similar to a drop curb inquiry. That's interesting. With the address of the property and description what is proposed. We would then check as the district council if planning permission would be required from us or not. Depends on the classification of the road. If planning permission is required from the district council, you then need to submit an application. However, if planning permission is then is not required from us, then you would need the pre-app reference number to include in your application to Highways at Lancashire County Council for permission. Whether permission or not is granted, we would strongly depend on county highways. Now, following on from that, I've just had a follow-up to that one, and this actually said, let me just find the reply I just got today. And this one, here we go. So this is from a different department. This is Building Control Surveyor. So it says, good afternoon, Dave. I do not believe there is any requirement for a building regulations application to be submitted for this kind of works. I believe the installer of the EV should be Part P certified. Yeah, of course they should. They should be able to provide you with a certificate of the works after they've been completed. So my experience, once again, is different to other people will find, and different councils, you will get different answers. There's nothing you can do. If your council says you can't fit them, nothing at this stage apart from petition them, send them letters, emails, everything else, and point out that they're doing a lot of harm. But if your council, like mine, it basically says, yeah, it looks all right, let us know exactly what you're doing, then that means that anyone in South Ribble Borough Council who lives in a terrace property and parks outside the house, then I would get an application in to get that done, because there are several variations. A gully is just one of them, by the way.
I suppose one question I would have is, living in the area, walking around, have you actually seen anybody that's got one of these gullies already installed?
No. I've also been asked about the problem of what happens if you can't park it directly in front of your house. The answer to that one is they do long cables now for charging. So if you can park next but one or next down but one, cable will go across in the gully under the pavement. But once it's in the gutter, you can run it down along the gutter to the next bay down. There are always going to be problems. This is not a perfect world, but for an awful lot of people, I've lived in terraced houses and I've usually been able to park outside. And I visit Jonas, he actually lives in a terraced property, and most days you can actually park outside. But don't forget that the average UK motorist does 20 miles a day, 140 miles a week. So in theory, just once a week, just leave it plugged in overnight and that will take you through the next week. So if one day a week you can get your car outside and plugged in, that's all you need. You don't have to charge your car every night. Okay.
So basically it comes down, it's a bit of a postcode lottery,
yes.
But if you want to be sure, get in touch with your local council, find out yourself. Don't assume it either is going to work or isn't going to work.
You know yourself, the reason we call the channel Dave Takes It On is we don't guess, we don't speculate, we don't pass on rumours. If I want to know whether South Ribble Borough Council will allow them, I apply to them and I ask them, and they will tell me what their policy is. I don't guess. Now, if everybody took that attitude and just said, I'm thinking of having one, don't write to me or leave a comment to me saying, do you think Oxford Borough Council, City Council would... I don't know. Why don't you just... One email, that's all it took. I got an answer back within 48 hours and a follow-up 24 hours later. So ask them and they will tell you categorically.
And what I'd also say then is, if you find out that your council is doing this or it isn't doing this, pop it in the comment section below. That way, share that knowledge, which is that we want everybody to be able to find that information. Right, so this was my first opportunity to appear properly in front of camera and to get to ask Dave some of the questions from our subscribers, from our viewers on the channel. So I hope it was really informative. Dave, I hope it wasn't too tough on you, the questions I was asking.
No, I'll probably get a lot of comments about hesitation and repetition and everything else. It's a bit trickier than you think when you actually don't know the questions that are being asked. I'm just going on memory and trying to talk to a camera and look off human at the same time. So yeah, thanks for putting up with us. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, by the way, leave some comments down below, click the like button. It all helps, and let us know that you'd like to see more like this. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and click the notification bell so the next time we do a video and release it, you'll be notified that we have done. So thanks very much for watching. Well, I'm Dave.
And I'm Jonas.